They found her running barefoot down the empty country road, her yellow sundress torn and covered in dust, her voice piercing the stillness of the pine forest like shattered glass. Her small fists clenched and unclenched as she chased after the rumbling motorcycles, her lungs burning with each desperate gasp. The words that tore from her throat were powerful enough to stop even the most hardened riders in their tracks. "They hurt my mama. She's dying in the woods." If you're watching the story unfold, pause for a moment and hit that like button. Drop a comment. Share this with someone who believes in compassion, redemption, and the courage to act when someone's life hangs in the balance. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Now, let's dive in. The rider leading the convoy of thundering motorcycles went by the name of Marcus Hammer Stone, a weathered, gray-bearded commander of the Desert Angels MC, a brotherhood of battle-tested, but fiercely devoted bikers who had witnessed enough darkness in their lives to recognize genuine terror when they saw it. When the small girl collapsed toward his front wheel, he braked with such force that rubber screamed against asphalt. Around him, 75 riders decelerated in synchronized waves, like distant thunder gradually fading to silence. The child, who would later introduce herself as Emma Rose, struggled to catch her breath. Her cheeks were streaked with grime and tears, her knees scraped and bleeding, barely able to stand upright. Marcus could see instantly that she had been fleeing for miles. He spotted the purple bruises on her thin arms, heard the ragged desperation in her words, and saw how her gaze kept flickering toward the tree line, as if something monstrous might emerge at any second. This wasn't some lost child having a meltdown. This was a young soul who had witnessed unspeakable horror. Emma extended a trembling finger toward the dense woodland bordering the highway. Marcus exchanged a quick look with his second-in-command, and without a word, he twisted the throttle and guided his bike off-road, the entire crew following in formation like an approaching tempest of leather and chrome. Emma tried to follow on foot, but Marcus carefully scooped her up and settled her in front of him on his fuel tank. She gripped his worn jacket like it was her only lifeline in a drowning world. The path she directed them down was barely visible, concealed by hanging vines and wild undergrowth, as if nature itself was trying to hide whatever nightmare waited ahead. The bikers advanced cautiously, their heavy boots crushing dead leaves and fallen branches. Marcus felt Emma's rapid heartbeat pounding against his chest, a frantic drumbeat echoing her fear. With every yard deeper into those woods, the atmosphere grew more oppressive, more wrong. Then they reached it, a small clearing that opened up like a scar carved into the wilderness. And there, suspended from an ancient oak tree, swaying gently in the wind, hung a woman, Emma's mother, Catherine Rose. Her toes barely grazed the dirt below. Her wrists were bound with yellow rope. Her chin rested against her chest, completely still. The sight silenced even the loudest voices among the riders. Marcus leaped forward, barking orders as he rushed to support the woman's weight, while his road captain sliced through the rope with a hunting knife. Catherine crumpled into Marcus's arms like wilted petals falling. He lowered her carefully onto the moss-covered ground. Her breathing was faint but detectable, a tiny spark of life refusing to surrender. Her face was swollen, her skin covered in scratches, and her heartbeat so weak Marcus almost couldn't find it beneath his rough fingertips. Emma threw herself down beside her mother, clutching her limp hand, weeping so violently she couldn't speak. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, a deep ache he thought he'd sealed away forever, the agony of losing his own son 3 years earlier to circumstances he couldn't control. He made an unspoken oath in that moment. This child would not endure that same devastating loss. Moving with practiced efficiency, the bikers established a defensive perimeter around Catherine and Emma. One member sprinted back toward the highway to retrieve their emergency supplies. Another stood guard, scanning the shadows between the trees for any movement. Marcus draped his leather jacket over Catherine's shoulders to preserve her body heat. As her shallow breathing began to stabilize, he gently coaxed a story from Emma, not through interrogation, but through patient silence that gave her permission to speak when ready. Slowly, haltingly, between hiccuping sobs, she explained everything. Dangerous men had invaded their cabin 2 nights ago. They smashed through the door, accusing her mother of witnessing something she shouldn't have seen, something about money hidden in the forest, something criminal. They bound Emma's hands with duct tape and locked her in the storage closet. But she managed to kick through a rotted panel in the back wall. She ran blindly through darkness and brambles until dawn broke, screaming for anyone who might hear. She'd been running for what felt like forever when she spotted the long line of motorcycles approaching like answered prayers on two wheels. For Marcus, no further explanation was necessary. He didn't need names or detailed accounts. He didn't care about the specifics of whatever criminal operation had led to this. What mattered was that Catherine and Emma were alive, barely, and the people responsible were still somewhere out there. He made a silent vow. They would not return to finish what they'd started. The bikers transported Catherine through the woodland trail, rotating carriers to distribute her weight. Marcus kept Emma close throughout the entire journey, the frightened girl gradually finding comfort in his steady presence. When they emerged onto the highway, the group formed a protective convoy around Marcus's bike and roared toward the nearest medical facility, creating an impenetrable wall of metal and determination around the injured mother and her daughter. At the rural emergency clinic, medical staff rushed Catherine into treatment. Emma refused to leave Marcus's side, sitting in his lap in the waiting area, unable to stop shaking. Marcus wrapped his powerful arms around her small frame like armor. He had comforted dying brothers on distant battlefields, held the hands of friends breathing their last, but nothing wounded him quite like this traumatized child trying to be courageous while her entire world collapsed. Hours crawled by. The sun descended toward the horizon, painting the sky orange and purple. Finally, a tired doctor emerged with exhaustion etched across his features, but also unmistakable relief. Catherine would survive. She was weak, severely traumatized, but she would live. The news made Emma dissolve into tears again, but these were tears of hope rather than despair. Marcus felt his own vision blur with unexpected emotion. He wasn't a man prone to crying, but life had a way of cracking open even the most reinforced defenses. The bikers didn't abandon their post. Not that night. Not the next day. They organized rotating watches outside the clinic, their engines rumbling periodically like faithful guardians maintaining their station. Marcus ensured Emma had hot meals, clean clothes, and a safe place to rest. When she refused to sleep without someone nearby, he sat in a chair beside her bed until exhaustion finally claimed her. During the following week, the Desert Angels helped restore the damaged cabin deep in the woods. They replaced broken windows, patched walls riddled with bullet holes, and stocked the kitchen with enough supplies for months. They installed motion-activated floodlights around the entire property perimeter. Marcus personally supervised the installation of a security camera system, and 3 bikers volunteered to conduct regular patrols through the area for the next 2 months, ensuring no one could approach undetected. Emma gradually began to smile again, tentatively at first, then with increasing brightness as the days passed. She would sprint toward Marcus whenever he visited the cabin, her tiny arms wrapping around his tattooed forearm with complete faith. Marcus, who believed his heart had been permanently closed to paternal feelings, found himself looking forward to those small embraces every single day. Catherine, slowly healing but still fragile, often observed from the porch swing with grateful tears shimmering in her eyes. She understood that without these strangers, these rough, leather-clad men that polite society often judged and dismissed, she and her daughter would perish in those woods, forgotten and unmissed. 3 weeks after the rescue, as Catherine grew stronger, she finally revealed the full story to Marcus over coffee on that same porch. She'd been hiking with Emma when they'd accidentally stumbled upon a drug operation, men unloading packages from trucks deep in a restricted area of the national forest. They'd spotted her before she could retreat. She'd run, but they'd tracked her to the cabin. They'd meant to kill her as a warning to anyone else who might wander too close to their operation. But Emma's escape and the arrival of the Desert Angels had interrupted their plan. Marcus listened with his jaw clenched. He'd suspected something like this. He made a call to a contact in the county sheriff's office, someone who owed him a favor from years back. Within 48 hours, a major task force descended on the forest area Catherine described. They arrested 7 men and dismantled a significant drug trafficking route. The men who tried to kill Catherine would spend decades behind bars. She and Emma could finally breathe freely. But the impact of that terrifying day lingered in ways both seen and unseen. Emma suffered nightmares for months, waking up screaming that bad men were coming. Each time, Catherine would hold her and rock her back to sleep. And each time Marcus visited, Emma would ask him to check all the locks, to promise he'd keep them safe. 4 months after the incident, when Marcus mentioned he needed to take a long ride south with his chapter for a charity event, Emma broke down completely. Her tears and pleas cut straight through every wall he'd built around his heart. He knelt down, placing his callous hand on her thin shoulder, promising he would always come back to check on them. And he kept that promise religiously, visiting so frequently that neighbors began joking that Emma had adopted a biker as her guardian. The relationship evolved naturally, Marcus teaching Emma how to fix bicycles, Catherine inviting him for holiday dinners, the three of them becoming something that looked remarkably like family. The other Desert Angels embraced Catherine and Emma as well, bringing gifts on birthdays, showing up for school events when Emma needed support, treating them as extended family worth protecting. The forest no longer represented danger in Emma's mind. The cabin no longer felt isolated and vulnerable. And Marcus no longer carried the crushing weight of a man who'd lost his only child and believed he'd never experience that connection again. 18 months after that fateful day on the highway, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Emma was thriving in school, her nightmares gradually fading. Catherine had started a small business from home, creating handmade crafts she sold online. Marcus had become a fixture in their lives, stopping by at least twice a week, often staying for dinner. Then, on a cold November evening, Marcus received a call that changed everything. His ex-wife, whom he hadn't spoken to in 5 years, was dying. She wanted to see him one last time. More importantly, she wanted him to know about their son, the boy he thought he'd lost to tragedy 3 years earlier. The truth hit Marcus like a physical blow. His son was alive. The accident had been fabricated by his ex-wife to cut Marcus out of their lives completely during their bitter divorce. Now, consumed by guilt as she faced immortality, she was finally revealing the truth. His son, now 16, had been living with her family across the country. Told that his father had abandoned them, Marcus was devastated, furious, and desperate to reconnect with the son he'd mourned. He had to leave immediately. When he told Catherine and Emma, the little girl's face crumpled. "You're leaving forever," she whispered, the old fear returning to her eyes. "No, sweetheart," Marcus assured her, pulling her close. "I'm going to meet my son, but I'm coming back. Your family, too. I don't abandon family." Catherine squeezed his hand. "Go. Bring him back here if you can. There's room in our family for one more." The journey to reconnect with his son was painful and complex. The teenager named Jake was angry and confused, having believed for years that his father didn't want him. It took weeks of patient conversation, old photographs, and painful honesty before Jake began to understand the truth. He'd been lied to, manipulated, kept from a father who'd never stopped loving him. When Marcus's ex-wife passed away 2 months later, Jake had nowhere else to go. His maternal grandparents were too elderly to care for a teenager. Marcus didn't hesitate. He brought Jake home. Home, surprisingly, meant the small cabin in the woods where Catherine and Emma lived. Catherine had already prepared the spare room. Emma had drawn welcome signs and taped them to the walls. The Desert Angels showed up with a truck full of furniture for Jake's new room. The adjustment wasn't seamless. Jake struggled with resentment and grief. Emma felt territorial about Marcus's attention. But Catherine, with her gentle wisdom, helped them navigate the rough patches. She'd survived the unsurvivable and understood that healing takes time and patience. Gradually, the four of them became an unconventional but genuine family. Marcus officially moved into the cabin 6 months later. A year after that, he and Catherine married in a small ceremony, surrounded by leather-clad bikers and wildflowers. Jake and Emma stood beside them, both wearing matching smiles. The Desert Angels didn't just save Catherine and Emma that day on the highway. They'd set in motion a chain of events that healed multiple broken hearts, reunited a father and son, and proved that family isn't defined by blood alone. It's defined by who shows up when you're running barefoot down a deserted road, screaming for help. It's defined by who stays long after the crisis passes. It's defined by who chooses you and who you choose in return. The cabin in the woods, once a place of terror, became a place of laughter and healing. The forest, once threatening, became their sanctuary. And Marcus, who thought he'd lost everything worth living for, discovered he'd actually found it, in the most unexpected way, at the most desperate moment. Sometimes the family we find is the one destiny sends running toward us when we least expect it. Sometimes redemption arrives on the rumble of motorcycle engines. And sometimes the people society judges most harshly are the very ones who save us. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stories like this remind us that compassion and courage still exist in unexpected places. Before you go, comment below. Have you ever been helped by a stranger in your darkest moment? How did it change your life? Remember, we all have the power to be someone's answered prayer when they need it most.